Welcome to This Explainer. I am so thrilled you're joining me today because we're going to unpack a truly fascinating philosophical riddle. It's a riddle all about food, pleasure, and the hidden, true cost of our everyday cravings. We make choices about what to consume multiple times a day, right? But how often do we actually stop to look at the mechanics of why we choose what we choose? Or what happens when our senses completely trick us into paying a massive premium for just a tiny bit of fleeting satisfaction? Well, today we're going to look really closely at a concept drawn from a profound piece of writing known as the Treatise on Frugality. And as you'll see, this ancient wisdom aligns perfectly with modern behavioral nutrition.
Okay, let's dive right into Section 1, the 9 Crucial Question, Unpacking a Dietary Riddle. So the source material presents us with a remarkably simple yet deeply challenging economic and biological puzzle. It basically asks us to look at the value we assign to what we consume. Take away the marketing, the pretty presentation, and our own deeply ingrained habits, and let's just look purely at the function of our food. Imagine you've got two options for a snack. Option 1 is a simple piece of cheese that costs 1 kurush. You can think of a kurush as a basic unit of currency, kind of like a cent or a penny. Option 2 is a piece of the absolute finest, most opulent baklava, and that one costs 10 kurush. So here's the big question. If both of these items do the exact same nutritional job once they actually land in your stomach, where do those other 9 kurush actually go? What exactly are you buying with that massive premium?
Let's break this down a bit. We've got our 1 kurush cheese. It's simple, it's nourishing, and as our source text actually points out, sometimes it's literally more beneficial for the body. Then we have the 10 kurush baklava. Yes, it's opulent and it's costly, but fundamentally it provides equal nourishment. The absolutely crucial point here is that before either of these items enters your mouth, they are physically and functionally equal in their purpose. And after passing down the throat, they nourish the body equally too. The body just extracts the fuel it needs completely regardless of the price tag.
Moving on to Section 2, Gatekeeper versus the Ruler, a royal palace metaphor.
To truly wrap our heads around what happens in that brief moment between the plate and the stomach, the text introduces a brilliant metaphorical mapping. It likens the human body to a royal palace, complete with its own hierarchy, rulers, and guards. Let's just walk through the timeline of a single bite to see how this palace operates. Step 1. Before the mouth, our cheese and our baklava hold equal functional value. Step 2. Down the throat, they provide equal nourishment to the palace. But look right there in the middle at Step 2, on the tongue. The tongue is the gatekeeper of this palace, and this stage, this momentary pause on the tongue, is quite literally the only place where the 1 kurush cheese and the 10 kurush baklava differ.
Now, what's really fascinating here is the sheer brevity of that middle stage, 30 seconds, just half a minute of pleasure. That is the only difference between the cheap cheese and the expensive baklava. The entirety of that 9 kurush premium you paid is completely spent and exhausted in just 30 seconds on the tongue. When you map the vast difference in cost against such a tiny fleeting window of time, the economics of our cravings start to look incredibly skewed.
Which brings us to Section 3, the cost of over-tipping, when the gatekeeper gets spoiled. This is where we hit a critical realization about waste, which is the logical conclusion of this metaphor. Think about this massive multiplier, 9 times the cost. If we're paying 9 times more for a sensation that lasts only 30 seconds, we are engaging in fundamental, undeniable waste. But the problem isn't just financial, it's structural. It completely disrupts the hierarchy of our biological palace. In our metaphor, the stomach is the actual ruler. The stomach is the one receiving the vital gift of nourishment to keep the whole kingdom running. The tongue is merely the gatekeeper, whose job is just to inspect the food at the door. When you buy the 10 kurush baklava instead of the 1 kurush cheese, you are essentially bringing a 1 kurush gift to the ruler, but giving a massive 9 kurush tip to the gatekeeper just to get it inside.
And what happens when you constantly over-tip a gatekeeper 9 times its actual worth? Well, it spoils him. The gatekeeper gets arrogant. As the source text vividly describes, the tongue eventually starts saying, "I am the ruler." It completely usurps power. It forgets its role as a simple inspector and begins to dictate exactly what is allowed to enter the palace, based entirely on who offers the highest tip and the most pleasure, completely ignoring what the actual ruler, the stomach, truly needs.
This brilliantly illustrates the chaotic physiological chain reaction that follows. Step 1. The spoiled gatekeeper demands the highest tip, seeking only pleasure. Step 2. Because the tongue is now pulling the strings, unhealthy excess is allowed unchecked entry into the body. Step 3. This creates a literal fire, chaos stirred up in the stomach, which is now totally overwhelmed by rich, unnecessary foods. And finally, Step 4. The ruler is overthrown, the body breaks down, and the person is forced to run to a doctor. All of this happens because the false appetite of the tongue was indulged way over the true need of the stomach.
Let's shift gears to Section 4, Science of False Appetite. Modern research meets ancient wisdom.
Now, it's one thing to hear a beautiful 19th century philosophical metaphor about a palace, but it's entirely another to see those exact same mechanics proven in a clinical setting today. A 2001 psychological bulletin study by Rayner and Epstein maps absolutely flawlessly onto the text's concept of the spoiled gatekeeper. They found that as dietary variety increases on the table, people eat far more than they actually need. Why is that? Because a new taste can literally re-trigger hunger, even after a person is completely full. Endless variety artificially stirs up a false appetite. Your stomach, the ruler, is basically saying, hey, I have enough fuel, but your tongue, the spoiled gatekeeper, sees a new flavor, demands another tip, and forces the gates open. The result? Overeating beyond real need, which leads directly to the indigestion and illness our philosophical text warned us about.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, Reclaiming Your Fair Measure, the balance of Iktisat.
So how do we actually fix this? How do we stop over-tipping the gatekeeper and avoid this scientifically proven pitfall of false appetite? While our source text offers a really powerful guiding principle to help us reclaim our fair measure, that principle is called Iktisat. Iktisat means frugal balance. It means living with a conscious awareness to keep taste firmly in its proper place as a mere gatekeeper. It means tipping the tongue only in fair measure rather than lavishly spoiling it. A person living with the principle of Iktisat doesn't fall for the trick of the 30 seconds of pleasure. They maintain biological and financial balance, honoring the ruler of the palace and preventing those illnesses caused by artificial, variety-driven appetites.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. Knowing what you know now about the ruler, the gatekeeper, and the fleeting 30 seconds of a 9 Cruise Premium, next time you choose a meal, how will you really decide whether an extra bit of pleasure is worth paying so much more for? Will you feed the ruler, or will you overtip the guard? Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep asking the right questions and stay focused.